Hey everybody, welcome to another episode here on Bully Whispers, and we are here today to discuss Law 6 of Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, Court Attention at All Cost, in the TV show The Wire. Greene goes on to further this idea by saying not to differentiate between good and bad attention because they will both bring you power. However, there are times, especially in the underworld, when it's not good to court attention, and this is addressed in the book. For example, when in the presence of a king or queen and doing so may get you into trouble, similar to how the dealers wouldn't want to deal right in front of cops, or when in a large crowd and doing so may bring social shame, similar to how they were worried that the corner kids would make them look bad in the steakhouse.
You took them to a restaurant.
Ruth Chris.
Linen napkins.
Silverware, more than one fork.
Did they embarrass us?
Hell, bitch. That is a water and some lemon.
But for the most part, according to Greene, these principles hold true. So in this episode, we will evaluate Law 6 in The Wire by first taking a look at how the drug crews use a tactic similar to P.T. Barnum's to actually turn a profit when being caught in a scam, before moving on to how you should court controversy because any attention brings power, as shown through the newspaper and Jimmy McNulty. Then we will move on to possibly the best example of Law 6 in The Wire, Clay Davis, specifically how he rainmade Stringer Bell, but also how he could potentially provide an example of how it can be taken too far, and then ending with how the attention strategy should be used depending on where in the hierarchy you are, as shown through the mayoral election, where the true power and significance of attention can be seen. P.T. Barnum was one of the most successful attention getters in American history, and his ability to gather crowds made him world famous. Now, old PT was not opposed to engaging in some deceitful shenanigans. Quick side note, he was also briefly the mayor of Bridgeport, Connecticut. Make of that what you will.
Oh boy, get ready for the letters.
But unlike most of his contemporaries, he wasn't worried about getting caught and could even turn a profit off of it. At one point, he claimed to have an 161-year-old woman that used to be one of George Washington's maids at one of his shows. Of course he didn't, and once the crowds realized this and began to dwindle and go elsewhere, he anonymously sent letters to the newspapers claiming it was all a hoax, that it was actually an automaton made from whalebone, Indian rubber, and a countless number of springs. Of course, this wasn't true either, yet the crowds returned. He managed to get the same people who had already paid once before to pay again for an experience they already knew was bullshit, all by calling it something else, similar to how the drug crews changed the name and cap color of what they are selling and present it as something different.
Alright, Death Grip ain't shit.
You change up the name.
What else?
Yo, I got it. Change the caps from red to blue, right? Make it look like we got some fresh shit. Boom.
Now, this may demonstrate Law 6's effectiveness in terms of groups of individuals with similar tastes, or, in the case of the drug crew, similar addictions, but in order to see it in terms of the masses with varying interests and concerns, we're going to take a look at the newspaper, Jimmy McNulty, and the fake serial killer. According to Greene, one of the worst things you can be is ignored, and surrounding yourself with the sensational is a great way to grab attention, which is why the Sun never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Despite shaky reporting and unsubstantiated sources, the newspaper goes ahead and publishes Templeton's story anyways.
I'm putting it out front. I think you've really captured the disparity of the two worlds in the city in a highly readable narrative. I wouldn't change a word.
Because they know they are in a war for attention.
Our circulation numbers are also down as we compete with a variety of media.
This is, of course, a very slippery slope, and we see just how far down it you can slide when the third element of attention is presented, mystery. On the police side of things, McNulty was getting frustrated at the lack of resources and was looking for a way to get them to the homicide squad. Unfortunately, in a city like Baltimore, murders are so common that they don't really draw much attention, so he fabricates a sex-crazed serial killer. This serial killer combines controversy, sensationalism, and mystery, so it's no surprise that the newspaper jumped right on it, and it ended up accomplishing both parties' goals. The Sun made money, and the police got their funding. This brings us to the political arena and the character who may be the best example of Law 6, Clay Davis. Count Victor Lustig was a notorious con man who was known for his weird and mysterious antics. No one knew exactly what he did, but he appeared successful and garnered a lot of attention, so he would have people begging him to let them invest, and they were so happy to do so that they didn't notice they were being scammed. This is almost exactly what we see happen between Clay Davis and Stringer Bell. Clay Davis was well known as a swindler, but with a reputation for being able to get shady things done, and no one knew exactly how he did it. As a result, Stringer Bell was so eager to deal with him that he was even aggressively trying to go further.
I'm ready to run now.
3 years. Crawl, walk, and then run.
And doesn't even realize he had been conned until it was pointed out to him.
He rainmade you. A guy says if you pay him, he can make it rain. You pay him. If and when it rains, he takes the credit. If and when it doesn't, he finds reasons for you to pay him more.
That being said, Clay Davis can also be viewed as an example of how Greene says things can be taken too far. If you become too well known for something, people may assume you are guilty of things even if you aren't. Much like the cops, other than McNulty, were willing to quickly believe Omar killed a civilian because he had received so much attention for violence, it would be very easy to convince someone that Clay Davis was rainmaking them even if he wasn't, just because he has received so much attention for doing so in the past. Lastly, this brings us to the mayoral race between Clarence Royce, Tommy Carcetti, and Tony Gray, where we see that it is really better to be slandered than ignored when, despite being hammered during the race, Royce still did better than Tony Gray, who was largely ignored. According to Greene, using slander as a tactic to draw attention to yourself works best when you are in a lower position, like Carcetti was to start. However, once you get higher, this tactic must be used sparingly or it gets old quickly. We can see both Carcetti and Royce demonstrating this at various points during the campaign. Starting from the day of the debate and moving forward, Carcetti starts from a very lowly position, doesn't think he can win, and is willing to go more directly and personally at Royce.
Any statistics coming from the police department cannot be trusted because under this mayor, the police are more concerned with protecting Clarence Royce politically than fighting crime.
Royce, on the other hand, who was firmly on top for the moment, was much more passive in his attacks at Carcetti.
Carcetti may think it's in his interest to exploit people's fears. He's been doing it throughout this campaign. I'm offended by it personally.
However, after the debate, due to the dead witness, Carcetti finds himself much closer to Royce and adjusts his strategy accordingly. Of course, needing Tony Gray to split the black vote played a part, but letting Gray break the news about the detectives being switched also served another purpose. According to Greene, once the attention has been gained through that method, it gets old quickly, which is a concept Carcetti understood.
Why give it to us? Why not just stick it to Royce yourself?
Because after what Tommy did at the debate, it'll seem like more of the same if it comes from him.
Eventually, Carcetti wins, and we see one of the biggest powers of mystery when he meets up with Clay Davis.
Apologizes for the short con, and in the next breath setting us up for the law. He and Burrell are thick as thieves.
And do we know what the long con is?
At least we know he's running one.
It automatically puts others in the inferior position of having to figure you out. All of the time spent trying to figure out what he is up to and going down different countless pointless rabbit holes is time that he has to plan out his next con. Well, thanks for watching this episode here on Bully Whispers. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.